All right, it's time for another Patron request from Mike, who requested Happy Hell Night, which came out in 1992, and it is a supernatural slasher. And the plot for this movie is a psycho priest killed a bunch of kids in like 65, and then it's 25 years later, and there's this initiation. They tell these two kids to go to the asylum where the psycho priest is currently and take a picture of him, and then they accidentally release him, and then the psycho goes back to where he killed all those kids 25 years ago, and he continues his killing spree. This movie is streaming on Tubi if you want to watch it, and I believe Vinegar Syndrome has a Blu-ray for it. Now, did I enjoy it? Not really. But before I get into why, I just want to say some things real quick. The director of this movie and writer was the writer of Brain Scan, and the actor playing Ned was the one-eye cannibal guy in Wrong Turn. So thought that was interesting. And also, one of the other writers of this movie was the production designer on Blood Diner, which is my favorite movie of 1987. Underrated gem. Check that out. All right, now let's talk about the movie itself. All right, so Happy Hell Night. What did I like about it? The guy from Wrong Turn, his character in this movie, Ned, was the best character. He was the standout. He's the sleazy guy. He's planting cameras all around the house. I liked his performance the best. He was really the only character that stood out and was amusing to me. Everyone else was just kind of boring, and I just wasn't really into anyone else in the movie. So Ned, he's the standout comic relief character. I really liked the flashback to the killings in 1965, the discovery of all the bodies everywhere. This movie is somewhat gory. It's definitely more gory than what I just watched, Pledge Night. So this one at least has some of that in here. And I just thought the flashback sequence was kind of creepy. The reveal of the killer and how he looks. He's got this blank, pale, emotionless face, the blackest eyes, the devil's eyes. He just looks scary. I like that this movie has a young Sam Rockwell, and it has Kolchak from The Night Stalker and Night Strangler, McGavin. And I thought the movie looked really good, especially like the night scenes, the atmosphere of the house that they're at, and the cemetery, the church. Like, I thought the movie looked good for its smaller budget. I like the killer's choice of weapon in this movie. It's an ice axe. Looks like a hammer, but it's just got this really long, pointy end, and he just drives it through a lot of people's heads in this. So I thought that was a cool, unique weapon. And, you get some somewhat gory kills with it. What I don't like about the movie, though, start off small here. I just thought there was too many time jumps in the first 5 minutes. It just keeps jumping back and forth. Like, whoa, hold on. Like, what year is it now? Like, the whole open in 1990 wasn't even really necessary. You could have just cut that out and just start in 91, and then at some point have a flashback to what happened in 65, and you could have left out that whole opening sequence showing the dude in his cell with the cockroaches crawling on his arm. Like, you didn't really need that. It was jumping way too much. Within 5 minutes, it's like in 1990, 25 years earlier. Oh wait, now it's 25 years later, or actually it's 27 years later. It's just jumping way too much, and it's not even necessary. So, I thought the acting was pretty poor from a lot of these actors. These kids just aren't that great. It was just really dragging the film down for me. And another thing was the soundtrack I was not into. I looked up the composer, and it wasn't a surprise to see that he only did one other movie after this, or before, and makes sense. This is a terrible soundtrack, in my opinion. It's also very inconsistent, and at one point it sounds like a ringtone, like someone's trying to FaceTime. I also found the first act to be boring, and I think that's just because these characters are boring, except for Ned. I also would have preferred if the killer were not supernatural. I don't like killers just teleporting all the time. Like, how did this guy ever get captured? I don't feel like they ever explain that. Maybe they did and I missed it, but how did he get captured? And how is he in that room for 25 years if he can just teleport out of there? He seems to be teleporting all the fucking time in this movie. he's getting around pretty quickly. So don't tell me he's not teleporting. And even the characters themselves, who aren't supernatural, they seem to be teleporting quite a bit as well. I also don't like the fact that the killer just uses 2-word sentences before and after each kill. Like he's Freddy Krueger, he's got to say something funny, but it's not funny. It's just know this, know that. He starts everything with the word no. Like no peace, no sex, no thank you. I don't know. Like he's just saying all kinds of stupid shit. And it undercuts his scariness. He looks creepy, but then he starts talking and you're like, no, please, shut up. And lastly, I just thought the third act, and especially the ending, the way it wraps up, I thought was just so generic. Been here, done that 1,000 times just to set up a sequel so lazily. And it's a cheat. It just goes against everything they set up. So final thoughts, this is a messy slasher that has good atmosphere and a scary looking villain, but that's undercut by the words coming out of his mouth. And the story's just not riveting, the characters aren't compelling, and the end of this movie is just so generic. So when it comes to Happy Hell Night, I'm giving this 2 out of 5. Alright, time for a spoiler discussion, if anyone's even still listening. So there was some conflicting information here. The movie clearly stated that it was 1965. You heard it on the radio. Hell Night, 1965. And then in present day, 1991, this guy, Ned, starts talking about what happened, and he said it was 1963. I thought it was funny that the female nurse at the asylum is watching wrestling on TV and like drinking and burping, like just totally not what you expect from a character like this. So the two dudes, they arrive at the asylum and they take the crucifix that I guess was keeping him in there. I'm curious how he even got brought there, if he can teleport, like whatever. But I guess the crucifix is keeping him in there and preventing him from teleporting out of there, maybe. But yeah, they take that off, and then the one dude gets his hand chopped off or ripped off, and then he just goes quiet, so you think he's dead. But no, he's in there. He's just bleeding, and he's like, I'm bleeding. No, I gotta stop the bleeding. He's more concerned about the fact that he's bleeding and needs to stop that than trying to get the fuck out of there and escaping. And, you can deal with the bleeding later. How about you try leaving? And then the other guy, who just saw the severed hand, knows that his friend is probably dead in there, just slowly goes into the cell to investigate, like, what just happened? Like, how about you run out? If I saw my friend or whoever's severed hand right there dragged into a cell at an asylum, I would be hightailing it the other way, not walking into that cell to see what's up. It's just ridiculous. Then the nurse at the asylum has like a Jimmy kill from Friday the 13th Part 4, where her hand gets stabbed and stuck into the table, and then her throat gets slashed after that. Blood splashes onto the wall, whatever. And then, so this guy, whose girlfriend is cheating on him with his brother, he just walks up to this girl and just says, hey, you want to fuck? And then she's like, sure, why not? The best part of this movie is when the Jesus statue on the crucifix at the church comes to life and then like is moaning and blood's coming out of his stomach, and then he like falls off and hits the ground and shatters, turning back into a statue. Like, that was just some weird shit that just came out of nowhere. And then later on, we see that the priest is on that cross, but it's upside down and his face has been mutilated. So the girl who agreed to have sex, because sure, why not? She ends up not having sex with the guy because he doesn't have a condom. She gets in the van, and then we see the ice axe go through the roof and then out through the top of her head and out her like mouth or the bottom of her chin. But there was already blood on it before it went through the car, but yet this is the first kill with that weapon. When the killer priest grabbed that weapon, though, off the wall, he did so very quietly without the guy like 6 feet to the left noticing or hearing this shit get taken off the wall. So again, he would have to be like teleporting, like in and out. And so, but when he got that weapon, how come he didn't kill the guy in the chair right there? Why did he just leave him there? So this girl who's into handcuffing herself to beds gets her hand chopped off and screams for like 10 whole seconds. You're wondering why he hasn't like finished it, like kill her so she can stop screaming for help. And surprisingly, everyone at this place, inside and out, can hear her screaming. Usually in other horror movies, people scream and no one can hear it somehow. So at some point, all 4 of them are in the attic. I'm not sure what brought them up there, but sure, they're in the attic instead of just going out the front door, whatever. So they're in the attic, and then at some point, one of the girls is just gone, and then they look around the corner, and in the corner of the attic, the girl is in a like rocking chair that's rocking back and forth, and they're like, Susan, what, or whatever her name is, I'll just say Susan. Susan, what's going on? And then they touch her, and then we get the cliche of the head popping off, and it's like, okay, how did he get up there and then kill this woman, decapitate her, and then move her body over to this chair without them noticing or hearing it happen? I think Halloween Resurrection ripped a page from this movie. We got cameras throughout the house, and then one character is telling the other characters where the killer is at because he has access to all the cameras. He's looking at all the surveillance footage, like, the killer's around the corner, he's behind you. Very much like in Halloween Resurrection, except that one was like text messages. We find out that Kolchak, that's not his name, but he's Kolchak to me, he is responsible for what's happening. He's the one that he did some ritual thing and is the one who caused everyone to die 25 years ago. He made some kind of bargain with someone, yada yada. And then he gets killed right after admitting all this. And then his body starts walking on its own. And then he's alive again. Like, what's going on here? Like, he's dead on the bed. And then he gets up and walks out. Again, no one hears this. How? How is it even possible? There's like a whole thing like blocking the door. He would have to move it. Like, what the fuck? So this guy doesn't hear all this shit happening right behind him. But then, so his dead dad is gone from the bed. And then at some point, he just stabs the bed that's empty. And then his dad reappears and he's alive again. And he's like, oh, you stabbed me, son. It was just a really confusing sequence of events. I don't understand why it was even necessary. And another thing that wasn't really necessary is this awful fast forward edit when the guy's on his bike. And so the killer gets his hand stuck in a bear trap and then decides to just saw his entire arm off with like a scalpel instead of just cutting like his hand off. He had to go all the way up here. And then by the time it's all said and done, they say the special words from a book, and then they have him within a circle. This beam of light shines through. They stab him with this special dagger. This is sounding a lot like Jason Goes to Hell. When they do all that and they kill the killer by doing what they were told to do, because they said it would work, after that's all said and done, the cops arrive instantly. Who the fuck called the cops? I don't remember anyone calling the cops. Again, maybe I missed it, but why are they arriving? And what a coincidence. It's like the second everything's done. Like, oh, you guys are so helpful. Why couldn't you be here like an hour ago? But even though they did everything they were supposed to do to get rid of this evil priest, they have our survivors in the back of an ambulance. It's looking like a Friday the 13th ending. And then it just cuts to the front of the ambulance, and guess who's driving it? It's the bad guy. It's the evil priest. Who was surprised by that? It's been done in a million movies, and why is this fucker even still alive? They did everything they were supposed to do. This movie established these rules, and then it just completely fucking ignored them at the end. So that's the end of Happy Hell Night. What are your thoughts on this supernatural slasher from 1992? Let me know in the comments below. And as always, if you like what you've seen here, you can hit this like button and become a subscriber today just by clicking on my cartoon face in about 5 seconds. And remember, it's all an opinion. You don't need to get butthurt about it.